Welcome back to the channel, guys, and a new video on the Infiniti Hybrid. You can see it is on the back of the Kent Auto Salvage lorry. The car weighs 1.9 tonne. Legally on my truck I can only carry 1.4 tonne. So we are having this car delivered to Josh at JR Service Vehicle Services. We are not allowed to mess with this car. We said it in the last video. So we're going to send it straight over to Josh. He's going to do some diagnostics on it, and he's actually said, Rob, once we find the root cause of the problem, I'll give you a shout, come over and we'll go right through it. So we'll pick up once Josh gives us a call and we know what's going on with it.
Just before we start showing you the car, I just wanted to make something quite clear. This is not a how-to work on your hybrid video. It is not a guide on how to safely work on your vehicle. Please do not touch the hybrid or electric vehicle system if you are not trained to do so. This is 400 volt DC. In our opinion, it's more dangerous than sticking your hand in an industrial consumer unit. There is two poles to this battery, one negative, one positive, and touching them can give you a 400 volt shock. If you were lucky after touching that, you'd be going to hospital. If not, something worse could happen. Sorry to be boring, but just wanted to make that very clear. Just as a guide, anything orange on a hybrid vehicle or electric vehicle is high voltage. It is orange. Anything orange, sorry, means you cannot go ahead and touch it safely without a few tools and apparatus. And please leave those connections and everything to the professionals. Some of the tools we're using a multimeter, and the multimeters have to be category 3, and so do the leads. And you have to be careful with these because a lot of our leads aren't actually rated. You'll see that they're cat 3 because they have cat, if the camera will focus, they say cat 3 on them. The other thing we're going to be using is gloves and goggles. Gloves, they have to be the right type, they have to be in good condition, and you have to test them. Every time you wear them. Pretty poor test, example of a test, but basically ultimately what we're doing is blowing air in, capping the glove off and making sure there's no leaks. If there's any leaks, and air can get out, electric can get in. But with that in mind, we'll get on with the video. Right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to get onto Infiniti's technical data for this one. There is a variety of descriptions for that fault code depending on which manufacturer you go for. So we're going to struggle to fix it unless we get some factory info. So I'll show you what I can, and I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible. Okay, so we know that the car switches on and then switches off, as Rob and Chris showed, and it's throwing this fault code. This is slightly different from the factory info just because I've modified it slightly for copyright reasons. But yeah, high voltage fuse, that's what the fault description is. You've got a big fuse in the service plug. First thing we did was check that. You'll see us check that later on, but that is what we checked first thing, and that's fine. But the description of it, so even though it's saying it's the high voltage fuse, that's what the scan tool is saying. It is saying when the hybrid powertrain control module detects that there's the high voltage battery current is more than -3 amps, and traction motor inverter input voltage is less than 25 volts for a 0.45 second during pre-charge. Possible cause, the wiring effectively, the 2 relays, which we'll show you later, the traction motor inverter, the high voltage battery controller, the high voltage fuse, DC converter, or the aircon compressor. So bear that in mind because we'll get into that a bit later. Okay, again, to try and do this as quickly as I can, I've made some of these diagrams, so some of these lines are a bit weird where I've drawn them, but that's again for copyright reasons. So you have got on this system, we've got the higher voltage battery pack here, and then you've got the inverter at the front of the vehicle, and an aircon compressor over here somewhere, and the DC converter. Anyway, the way that this system works, it does a self-check. There is a capacitor in here, and a capacitor is like a very fast-acting power bank, for want of a better description. And if you were to connect a battery straight to that, to be honest, nothing would really happen at first. It would, over time though, where the capacitor is such a great load and it's quite high intensity, you would wear the contactors out or the relays out that control the power going to that module. So what the what the manufacturers do, they put in a pre-charge relay, and it has a resistor here that slows the current down going into the battery, and it's on the neutral side. So you switch the ignition on, it goes into a pre-check, etc., and it switches on the positive main relay here and this pre-charge relay. And so the pre-charge relay has got a resistor on the circuit, and it slowly charges the capacitor, and about 0.5 seconds later it's looking for 25 volts, as we've discussed. And once it's started to charge and it's got a bit of charge in it, it then switches on the neutral relay, which bypasses the resistor, gives it full battery current, and then switches the pre-charge relay off. And it's not doing that. We will see later, we'll get a test light and you'll see the actual relay switching on and off. So on this circuit, you have got 3 high voltage fuses, actually 4, sorry. You've got 1 in the service plug, which we've checked. We've got 1 that goes down to the DC converter, and 2 here that go to the compressor. And obviously the fault description is saying high voltage fuse. So obviously a lot of the time we would straight away go, well, hang on a minute, it must be a fuse issue. But if you have a look, the fuses go to the aircon compressor and the DC converter. There is no fuse other than this fuse in the service plug, which we've checked, that go to this inverter module. So there isn't a single fuse. Even if all 3 of these were popped, we would still expect to see voltage at this inverter. There isn't. I'm not sure how it will show in the video. I'm not sure if you'll see us checking the voltage. I don't think you will. We've already checked it, and then later in the video we will check it and show you how we checked it. And there is nothing. So even if all these fuses, these 3 fuses were blown, we'd still get voltage. If this one was blown, we wouldn't. But interestingly, this electric compressor, which is the aircon, and this DC converter is on the fuse. So these 2 fuses here, this line here from the compressor goes to this pre-charge relay and the resistor. So yeah, this is the sort of circuit. This main system 1 and this pre-charge relay circuit is what we're looking at. Using a bit of common sense, we would expect that if one of these circuits is down, it's probably going to be the pre-charge relay circuit, because it is smaller. You would expect that one to fail before the main system, but that's not to rule out the main system relay. But just keep in mind, bearing in mind what you know already, keep in mind this aircon compressor, because I think this is going to come up later. Like I say, that's all on the pre-charge relay circuit as well as the main relay circuit. So please bear in mind that that's had a compressor, because I think that is going to come into play. Okay, so we've got 3 questions to ask throughout this diag. 3 objectives is what's failed, how has it failed, and why has it failed. Once we've worked out what's gone wrong and how it's gone wrong, then we can sort of try and use that and start looking into why it's gone wrong, because we don't want to replace the faulty component and then put it all together and then a month later the same thing goes. Okay, so obviously you've already all seen it comes on, doesn't start. Rob and Chris tried that, and we had some fault codes in it. And as I said in the pre-video, you get the fault, that P0A95, every time you start it. So we've done that. So what I'm going to do is first thing I'm going to do is load the scan tool up, and we're going to get some live data on the car, and then we'll cut back in to show you. We'll stop the camera every time we're waiting for this, because this thing takes ages on this vehicle. So, and we're going to try and get the video short and sweet. Okay, so we're in the EV side. You might have to get that off the tripod and just show inside here. You've got this warning light on the dashboard, which is showing that there's a hybrid system fault. And when we clear the fault code, that's all we're doing, just clearing the fault code. That goes off, as we said, and we can repeat it every single time. Go to start it, you see that it just started to try and start, and then it went off. There's also some clicking from the boot. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go into the data stream for this motor control and the EV. And in live data, we have got inverter voltage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the fault code. Then I'm going to get some live data. I'm going to just go through it now. We're going to pause the camera. We're going to go through and select the items that we want to show. Okay, so we've got the live data up here. We've got this high voltage battery current. I alluded to that in the pre-video to this, saying that it higher than -3. Now, we've decided that higher than -3 is anything -2, -1, 0 or above. So that's sort of where we've come to terms with this. Hopefully it'll make sense by the end of the video. You've got 346 volts at the high battery. Then these are the relays. You've got the main relay, neutral, main relay, positive, and then the pre-charge relay active. And the inverter voltage is 2 volts. So now we want to see what happens. We're going to actually record this. We're going to see what happens when we try and start this car. When I push this, you're going to have to be quick. But you'll see that the main relay, one of the main relays comes on, and so does the charge relay. But if you look, the battery voltage does not go down. The inverter voltage does not go up. The main relay has switched on, and so has the pre-charge relay. But the neutral main relay has stayed off. It came on here, 10 seconds. That was the main one. And the pre-charge relay came on, similar time, then went off, came back on, and then it switched off completely. So we're not getting this main relay on. We're not getting voltage at the inverter according to the scan tool. So now what we need to confirm is that inverter voltage low? Because the inverter voltage, technically the control module in that inverter could be faulty and the voltage could be getting there, but it's not seeing it. So what we need to do is clarify whether there is voltage getting to the inverter or not. On this car, we'll pause the video, we'll show you where the inverter is. So under the bonnet of this car, this is the inverter. Someone has been here before and we haven't taken all this all out. This wiring is all low voltage, so it is safe. This isn't any high voltage. Obviously anything orange, as we said, is. Sorry about the noise. We've got a battery support unit on this car, just because the 12-volt battery is pretty low. So we've got the wires coming into the inverter, and we've decided that there is an easier place to start. Rather than checking the 2 wires coming into this inverter over here and stripping it down, it does look like we've got to take the scuttle panel off and everything, and someone has definitely been here before because there's a couple of bolts missing. So we will have to put them back in. So someone has probably already done this test. But we have found that the terminals at the battery are actually easier to get to. So we're going to take some measurement readings directly from the battery, but the other end of these 2 wires, just because it's easier to get to, that's purely the reason. So we're going to check there to see if we've got voltage there. If we've got voltage there and not voltage there, there's going to be even more problems. But we're hoping that we're not going to see any voltage at that battery, coming out of the battery on these inverter posts, just because that's going to back our theory up on what we think is wrong with this car. If we do see voltage, realistically, the inverter is probably going to be at fault because it's not seeing the voltage. So we'll take you to the back and then we'll do some tests. Right, so one quick test we wanted to do before, just to kind of show you what we're doing or what we're looking for. We've got our wiring diagram in the boot. And we've got this is the control module here, the hybrid powertrain control module. Again, this is all low voltage. This is nothing dangerous, hence we haven't got any safety gear on. But Andy's going to be in the car, clearing the fault codes and trying to start it. And we should see this test light up. We actually want to confirm that the relays are clicking. Hopefully, if I put the microphone on the battery, you'll hear them clicking as well. So this is the first relay, which I think, if I've got it right, is the positive high voltage relay.
So Andy's in the scan tool at the minute, and there's the codes that we've got.
So Andy, if you clear the codes and then just try and start the car for us, we should see. If you try and start it, right, we see that one come on. Right, clear the codes and go again. Try again.
Yep.
Again, you'll see that, and you saw the flicker of the LED. That's the pre-charge one that was jumping up and down. And then this is the one that should switch in, which isn't, which we think is causing the code. So if you clear the codes again.
Yep.
And go one more time. Nothing on that one. And you can hear the 2 relays clicking. So I don't think there's nothing wrong with the control side of the relays. So this module could have been at fault. That's what the fault description said, which we agree with. But there's nothing wrong with the control side of the relays. They are working. Yeah, they are working. So we're not getting to the point of the negative relay coming in. There's some pre-checks the car does. That's what it's failing and bringing up this fault code. So we're not worried about the low voltage side of the contactors. We're not worried about that control module. We're not worried about immobilizer or anything like that. That's all fine. So the problem is going to be on this high voltage system. So the next thing to do is get the safety gear on, and we will remove the fuse. And then this is the cover we was talking about. Behind here, after doing the digging, in fact, if you bring the camera around, you can see the orange wires down here. And these are the wires that go to the aircon compressor and the inverter. So we're going to get some gear on, take this cover off, and we should be able to see the inverter wires we want to get to. Okay, so we're going to go through the shutdown procedure now. Fred's going to grab a 10mm spanner and just disconnect the battery. So this is the low voltage battery. You may be able to hear in the background that the charger is on, so I'm going to just go and switch that off now. The other procedure is that the key needs to be nowhere near the vehicle. So key has to come out, hence the thing beeping, and that needs to be locked away in a key box. And the last aspect of it is that's disconnected, so there's no way that can touch. So Fred's tucked that out of the way, so that's completely out of the way. And then the last bit of the procedure is disconnecting this high voltage service plug. And now we would wait for 10 minutes. Just while we're waiting, just to explain, this has got a big fuse in it, which we have tested. Would have been one of the first things we tested, but Fred will get a multimeter and just show that test. It's just a resistance test. And the other feature of this plug, it has got 2 pins in it here, which tell the car that this plug is in. If we try to do this, redo the fault code test now, the fault codes for the high current fuse would go away, but what it would say is that it's disconnected and the service plug is disconnected. So all the time that those 2 pins are out, it knows that there's going to be no voltage because this isn't in. Right, so do you want to just explain what you're doing?
But you just want to see that there is
under 1 ohm of resistance, it says. So
yeah.
We'll set the meter to ohms, and we'll set it to the lowest ohms possible,
which is over there,
200. And then just literally, if we touch these 2 leads together, if you come down with that a little bit, when we touch these leads together,
be perfectly zero.
Should go to 0. There is a little bit of resistance somewhere, but it's good enough for this test. Which is, there we go. So that is fully connected together, and he's just demonstrated that half the boot is apart and half the trim clips are inside. But yeah, so we're gonna wait for 10 minutes and then we're gonna come back. Okay, so now the system is fully powered down, we're going to take some of these clips off. Just a note, this gun's obviously not insulated, and to be completely honest, we don't actually need the gloves on at this moment in time because we're not actually disconnecting anything. We're not into the battery yet, but it is always a good idea to get the gloves on because we don't know, to be fair, what we're going to find behind this cover. But while we're taking all these bolts out, they are safe, so we're not going to need an insulated tools at this stage. So we're just going to buzz this shield off here, and we're going to buzz this shield off here. So that's one shield off, and we're still not on high voltage terminals yet. Okay, so now behind here, just if you move out of the way a little bit, we've got, just to explain, these connectors here are for the air conditioning. There is still your service plug fuse. We're going to take this panel off as well, and if you just want to get that last 10 mil out, and then we should be here. Interestingly, this isn't in orange, but we know that there's going to be high voltage behind there. So, because of the orange cables going in and off. So this is the point where it does get a little bit more dangerous. So this is the point where we definitely need to keep things insulated. So we're going to remove things from the boot now, anything metal, all the bolts we've taken off before we take any of these covers out. And we are going to get the multimeter. Fred, if you could grab that. And Andy's going to take the cover off. Just this white cover. There we go. Right. Now, this is the point where it does get slightly dangerous. We have got to put the service fuse back in because we need to test the voltage at this terminal here. You can see you've got the air conditioning points here. Then we've got the DC to DC converter there, and then the motor, which is the high, the thickest wires. So what we want to do is check some terminals at this stud, but this is the point where this could have 400 volts in it. So we're going to get set up, and then we'll show you some more. And at this stage, we put a chain around the vehicle and a sign to say that there's an electric shock wrist as part of the regulations. This is just maybe a slight message to some of you hybrid techs. I mean, probably a lot of you know this, but it is just something to bear in mind. If you're using a multimeter to check for voltage, i.e. to check a circuit's safe, you can, obviously, if you put this in the wrong place, this is going to become an amp meter and therefore have a dead short. So hopefully the fuse is going to pop in this before it does any damage, but it's just something to bear in mind. So sometimes the probe testers are a little bit better because you can't put them in the wrong setting. So fortunately, we've got a negative here and a positive next to it. Even though they're going to separate circuits, they are all still the same. So that is quite helpful. So we're going to pop Fred back into the car in a minute, but what we're going to do, we're going to plug this multimeter into these terminals. We're going to put the battery back on, and we're going to liven the system back up. This is why we're using crocodile clips, so we don't need to be too near it. And then we're going to check the voltage on this meter. So we're going to put the negative terminal back on, put the service plug back in, sorry. So the system is now dangerous, and then we're going to put that negative terminal back in, and we're going to get the key, and we're going to repeat the test and find out if we've got voltage. Right, so Andy's going to clear the code and then try and start that again.
Ready?
And nothing, maybe 1 volt. No, that's just the meter, to be fair. So there is absolutely nothing at those terminals. That's with the service plug back in, with the battery, etc., back in. So the next stage is we're going to make this safe again. We won't record it. We'll just do exactly what we did before. Take the service plug out, take the negative battery out, turn the battery charger off, and wait for 10 minutes. And then we're going to take some of these further connections off to get further into that. Behind this junction sort of box thing here, there is the actual junction box that we want to get to. So we've just done the safety measures, and then we've just disconnected this bracket here to get these wires away. And if you come in here, Andy, you'll see the relay box. You've got the top one, which is I'm not sure which one, but the two top ones are the negative and positive relays, and the bottom one is the pre-charge relay. And I believe that little white bit of plastic underneath there will be the resistor. So we're so convinced that the problem is in here. We could do some tests now. If you come over to the left a little bit, you can see the fuses in now. If I move that out of the way, you can see the fuse, that white sort of line, which is the fuse. They are for the aircon compressor. There's two of them, one going that way, one going up. I'm pretty sure in that white box there, I'm pretty sure the resistor will be in there. None of this is actually serviceable from Infiniti. You can't buy the parts, but that is where we think the fault lies. I don't think we need to do any further testing here now. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take all these wires off here, take the compressor wires off, and then behind here is the two motor wires. So we're going to take them off, and you'll see us on camera. We will tape up the wires when we take them off. That is the dedicated practice for working on hybrid systems. So that is what we're going to do. It is not the protection in case something sparks. It is just to protect the wires from elements or anything, and just in case it does end up landing on anything inside. So it's just a bit of extra protection, but the wires at no point will be live, or should at no point be live. So that's what we're going to do next, which is remove this battery. There's a few bolts along here. There's some trims in the back seat. So we're going to get the battery out and take a further look into this. We could do some tests, try and do some tests in there, but it's not exactly safe to try and do some tests and put the service plug back in. It's a little bit too tight and it's not worth the risk. So behind these back seats, interestingly, just quickly, they bolt down here and then they lift up, and one of the butt nuts was actually missing. But behind the seat there's a massive panel, fireproof I'd imagine, so a few little clips and things to take off. This backing comes off because there's a few bolts to hold the battery on at the back. We're going to take this cover off and we're going to leave those bolts till last. And that is the backing off. You can see the bolts we were talking about there. These last two, you don't need to take them right out. The other two you do, but what we're going to do, we're going to leave these ones till last because it's just they're nice and easy to get to from the back of the battery. So we're going to leave them to hold it while we undo the stuff in the boot. Okay, so we're just going to strip some stuff out of the boot. We're not going into high voltage stuff yet, so no need for insulated tools, but there's a fair bit of trim to come out. There's trim clips and spare bits of trim we're finding absolutely everywhere. But we've now can find the brackets for the battery, and this is the air duct for the battery. Yeah, a lot of plastic clips and stuff to come off, so I don't think we're going to film at all. But just to explain, the low voltage battery is off. This is as we said, the hybrid powertrain control module, and we're going to take the hybrid, all this sort of thing off up here. The fuse box, that's a 12-volt fuse box. We're going to strip all that out, strip these little bits off. So it's just literally bolts. You can see the bolts. There's nothing exciting. So we're going to do all that, and then we'll cut in when the battery's ready to lift out, I think. Right, and just like that, pretty much ready to come out. So the wires that are taped up there, they are obviously dead because they're what go to the battery. So, but they're insulated nonetheless, so just stop them from getting dirty and stuff. All the trim's out. That black wire, we have taped it up, but it's actually just a positive wire. It goes to the low voltage 12-volt battery. But yeah, a few breathers, all the modules out, and to be honest with you, it's actually quite a simple job. So all that's left now are the bolts either side at the bottom, and the bolts that I showed you underneath the seat. The Infiniti manual just says lay a bit of cardboard straight over this in the boot and drag it on, so that's probably what we'll do. Right, so unfortunately we tried to record getting this battery out, but all you could see is me and Andy bent over, and that is not a sight that anyone wants to see. So we've got the battery out. The factory manual even just says to wrap it, put a strap around it. So that's what we've done. It is pretty heavy. It's not mega heavy. I think two of us would lift it, but there's a point to use for the with the engine crane. So that's what we're going to do, and then get it laid down and strip the rest of this front cover off. Repositioned it a little bit. Done, you pump it up. yeah, I think you're ready to come out. And that is the battery removed from the car. So just this cover basically, so there's a few 10mm all around it. There's some underneath, so we're just going to buzz them out and then get this cover off, and then we should be able to get to what we want to get to, and we'll take you in. So down here we've got the fuses, which actually are all reading okay. I wasn't expecting that. Personally, I was expecting that they were going to be blown. So what we're going to do now, our next step is going to be to take this board out. So we've got a few 10mm, a couple of 10mm in there. But yeah, this is where we're dealing with the high voltage wiring now. So we're going to undo the 10mm connections and we're going to pull that board out. But yeah, there's a few components inside there. You've got your DC to DC converter here. That transforms that from 400 volts down to 12 volt to power up the 12 volt system and help charge the 12 volt system battery. Hence you've got this wire, which is not high voltage, but it is a positive wire that goes to the battery. So we're going to get this junction box out now and see what we see in there. Okay, so this is the contactor box. It's got Nissan written on it because they're who make these vehicles. These are you've got the two main inputs here from the battery. You've got the plug that controls the 4 contactors here, and then you've got the output for the DC to DC converter and the output for the air conditioning motor, and then you've got 2 outputs for the motor. They're the biggest ones. So you've got the contactor here. This is the main positive contactor, this is the negative, and this is the pre-charge relay. So what we're looking at here, you've got 3 fuses, 1 for the DC converter, 1 for and 2 for the air conditioning, and this resistor. So to try and do it as quick as we can, we're just going to do a very quick resistance check on the fuses, and I'm sort of half expecting 2 of these to be blown, or at least 1 of them to be blown. No, that's good. If this one's not blown, okay, so that doesn't look blown at all. So no, okay, and then this is the DC one. So I was expecting to see these 2 blown, but that's not to say the problem isn't here. We've got power coming in and we've got no power coming out. So the other thing is, and I have already pulled this out, is this is a resistor. And for anyone that can read that meter, that's saying that there's 7.2 mega ohms of resistance. That is way too high. This should be, I'm in a bit of a debate about what the nominal resistance should be for this, but I know it should be less than 400 ohms. So that is way too high. And yeah, so that is the fault. This is a little resistor. This is what takes the current down. This is what slows that capacitor down to charge it. So yeah, that is definitely the fault, and it's going to be a nightmare trying to get hold of one of these. I need to ring the manufacturer of this, who are in America, so they're 5 hours behind us. I'm not sure if you want to see inside it, but bearing in mind this is £1,400 plus VAT, there's really not much to see. A few strips of metal to join everything together. This is a current sensing device, so this is what detects the current coming out of the battery, just wrapped around the positive terminal. And yeah, 3 contactors and a couple of fuses, £1,400 plus VAT, so that is mad. One thing we have done is just with a 12 volt battery, is just checked all the contactors in on the board, and you can hear them clicking, but we've also run I won't show it because of time, but we've just powered up a 21 watt bulb through each of these relays and it lights up, so we know they're all good. The resistance on them is absolutely 0, so they're all in really good condition. So yeah, unfortunately this is the fault. Trying to get hold of one of these is going to be difficult. Like I say, none of these parts are available from Infiniti, but you can see the majority of them have got part numbers on them. Panasonic, obviously a massive manufacturer, which we'll be able to get some of these parts from, and I'm quite happy to fit it. This is just a push fit. If it was soldered and things like that, don't know if I'd want to personally solder it in. Not sure how much I trust my soldering skills, but it's not. It's just a push fit connector, so I'm happy to fit one. Okay, so we can answer 2 questions now. One of which is what has gone wrong. The junction box, how has it failed? The resistor has failed / I'm going to put burnt out. So now let's look at why. Okay, so back to the aircon compressor, which I've been alluding to. We know that that was on that circuit for the pre-charge relay, and that pre-charge resistor has burnt out. And as soon as I found out that the aircon compressor had been replaced, I sort of thought, I'd imagine, sort of listening a little bit to the guy, I'd think that's definitely got something to do with this. Right, so this should be around 0.7 mega ohms. Okay, so we're going to do a check on this. First thing to do, check the meter, check that it goes down to 0.1 is acceptable, and then simply this meter is on auto. So when I put this on, right, so we said about 0.7 mega ohms. That's gone down to ohms and about 146. So that is far too low. Yeah, the new one is about, I think it's about 700,000. So 700,000 down to 146. So that that is way too low. So why has the junction box failed? AC compressor has shorted. And I think it's fair to say it's shorted. Obviously, it's not a 100% dead short. There is still 150 ohms of resistance, but that is just not enough. That is going to be shorting that resistor out and burning that resistor out in no time. So, yeah, that's answered that. Now, obviously, we've done a what, how, and why has it failed on that battery junction box. Then there could be a question of why aren't we doing this on the aircon compressor? And it is a fair point. However, an aircon compressor's got moving components, it's lubricated, etc., etc. So it's not something that we would say is uncommon to fail. So that battery junction box, really, it shouldn't fail throughout. That should last the entire length of the car's life. There's no reason that should be burnt out. Whereas the aircon compressor, it's a moving component, it's a working component. It does sort of have a finite life. What we'll need checking is the aircon oil levels, etc., and the gas levels. Hopefully, when it was installed, it did have the right amount of oil in it. It was genuine Nissan, the box is still there, so I am going to dig through the info and make sure that the compressor had the right amount of oil in it from new, and then there'll be another couple of little checks needed on the aircon system, but just basically a re-gas as well. So we're not too bothered about looking in depth as to why that's gone. Providing it's been fitted properly and the thing's been flushed out, they don't tend to just fail off the bat. But I would say that that's what we'd call like a fair enough failure, a little bit like a starter motor burning out. They wear out, or an alternator, eventually they fail. There's no real reason normally to look into it. You know, an alternator, for example, is there's no oil leaking on it or fuel leaking on it. You can accept that it's just failed, and we'll accept that with this. And then that has had a knock-on effect to burn the battery junction box out, because you can imagine paying £1,400 plus VAT for a battery junction box, to then put it on the car and find that the aircon compressor burns out either instantly or a week later. You wouldn't be too happy, but we're happy that we've got to the bottom of it, and now it's just going to be a case of trying to find a resistor so we can put it in and get it back together. Should be a very short process when it's back together. There is the resistor. The new resistor, the legs were a little bit longer because they're slightly in the wrong place, so it come with this bracket which we've attached, so that is nice and secure. So yeah, that's all good, saving 1,400 quid for a 97p resistor. But they make the actual resistor that fits in there is a special order, you cannot buy it. So yeah, one with the same specs, 97 pence. And just testing this aircon compressor that's on the car, so we're going in through this wiring harness, and 0.7 mega ohms, so a little bit different from the 150, was it, or 750 ohms of the other aircon compressor. So I think we can say we definitely know why this part failed. Okay, so everything's back together, resistor is in, the service plug is still out, and we do want to just do a couple of final tests, and just thought I'd show you what we're going to be doing. We've got a multimeter which is hybrid rated, and it actually connects via an app to your phone, or in this case a tablet. So rather than trailing leads from the battery all the way to the front of the car, which as you can imagine could be potentially quite dangerous, we can sit in the car safely with Bluetooth and see what's going on at the back, which is fantastic. Just a moment of truth. Thank you. Cannot do that with gloves on. This is the scary part. In. Low voltage battery on. Time to test it and see if it will start. Right, so I've got the scan tool plugged in, we've cleared the codes, we've got our multimeter so we can just keep an eye on the voltage at those inverter posts, which we know was only hitting about 2 volt. Well, it wasn't hitting anything really before. And we've got the live data up with the relays and the inverter voltage on screen, so we can see what the scan tool's seeing and what the actual multimeter is seeing. And it's the moment of truth.
Do you think it's going to start then?
Yeah, that resistor was dead. It's got to, surely. Although I suppose we don't technically know if the motor and inverter and everything's all right, because we haven't actually looked at that. We've checked the resistance, but so if it doesn't, I'm sure.
Well, you can't back out now, mate. Like, you've done the stuff, so.
Yeah, no, it's going to start. It's going to start. I'm positive. I'm positive. Ready? Bang. Like that. And there's the voltage.
Good voltage.
Perfect voltage. It's running. Runs well, actually. Yeah, and if you come here, you can see now the pre-charge relay is come on just the once. So before it was coming on twice. I think basically where it wasn't meeting the voltage, it was obviously trying one more time before failing, but this time no. So that came on literally, if we pause that, you can see, let's go on there, that came on for a second. That's literally done 1 second to charge the relay, and then that's all that was for. So that resistor lasts 1 second, and yeah, burning that out, that resistor being burnt out caused a problem. 1,400 quid plus VAT for a part. But yeah, so all that's left now is we're just gonna have to do a couple of little bits underneath. We showed in the video earlier there was a couple of bolts missing out the inverter plug where someone's been playing, so we will just have to quickly go through the high voltage stuff. And the only downside to all this is we now need to put the rest of the car back together. But we'll get on. Here he comes. Is it all right? Perfect. So give Rob a call. Sweet.
Guys, I've just picked this car up, and what can you say? A huge shout out to Josh and his team there. They just didn't stop until they got to the bottom of it. I'm sitting in it now. It runs absolutely beautiful. The hybrid system in it is working absolutely perfect. So, and the video that Josh sent me, I've just sat there and watched. Chris has got the tree guys here today, so he hasn't seen it yet, but incredible footage. I'm not going to cut one bit of it, and it is all going out. I know it's a really long video, but it's very in-depth. See, this car just charged itself a little bit and turned off. I'm so impressed with it. I am going to book it in for an MOT. I have got the car booked in for an MOT, and I'm just about to take it over there. And also, I'm going to book it into JW Smarts and have the wheels done, because they are starting to go. That is not a bulge, guys. It's got them tyre protectors all the way around it. But yeah, huge shout out and a thank you to them again. Absolutely beautiful. Let's get it over for an MOT, get it valeted. It is quite dusty, obviously. It's been off the road for a while, and the MOT's long run out. I had to book it in, and I've just stopped here to quickly show Chris. So let's get over there and get it done. And here we go, guys. I'm going to keep this end bit down to a minimum because we didn't want to lose any of the footage that Josh actually recorded. But all cleaned, all valeted. years MOT, absolutely no advisories whatsoever. So it is now time to go inside, crunch the numbers on this one. I know you've all been waiting for it, but this car is absolutely perfect. And apart from a wheel refurb,
so a bit of a weird one, this guy's definitely a bit of a weird one. So initially that car got taken to that garage. The chap had already had some work done and had already received an invoice. Let's get you in there, mate.
All right.
Of £1,800, wasn't it?
Something along those lines.
Yeah, for work that was done.
That was the AC compressor.
The AC compressor,
replacement, yeah. Wasn't it?
So the guy, basically, a subscriber reached out to me and said, look, it's my mate's car. It's at this garage. He's done with it. It's not resolved the problem. And the next step was £5,000, the part to change that they was going to try. So ultimately, he lost faith, lost interest in the car. He said the chap in the garage has offered him £800 for it, scrap value. So he actually reached out and said, look, I'm not seeing you and Chris do one of these. Is it something you want to get interested? Is it something you're interested in? And he's been offered £800. He was completely honest. And we actually chatted about it for quite some time, didn't we? It was a long way up, so I had to go. I didn't have to, but I went in an hotel, got the train up there, and the recovery was £250. So genuinely, we sat here, had a chat. What did we say? 1,500 quid.
Well, originally we said 1,500 quid all in. We wanted it home for that, but
Yeah.
it's ended up being a bit dearer.
Yeah,
than
the
that.
delivery went up from 250 to 350.
And like you say, the hotel, travel lodge, train.
Yeah.
So it owed us a bit more than that, didn't it?
It did, yeah. But basically, we took a chance.
Which sounds cheap now, doesn't it? Now it's fixed.
Yeah, it does.
But
Yeah.
we knew we couldn't work on it.
No, that's right.
We didn't know how much of the car we was getting. It could have had parts missing. And worst case scenario we said was that we get it back. And we had in mind Josh, didn't we? But we didn't know for sure.
Yeah.
But you also found another company in Rochester, I believe.
I did, yeah.
And we was going to speak to them, but we knew that there was a possibility they might say, someone else has played with this.
We're not interested.
We're not touching it.
Yeah.
So we kind of knew that would be scrap it for spares then.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of money to gamble. I still say it's a lot of money to gamble on sight unseen, and with the story, you know, the situation that it could have been in a lot more bits, couldn't it? That
Yeah,
garage
definitely.
could have been, the battery pack could have already been removed. We didn't know, did we? We might have been getting the car without the battery.
I'll be honest,
So-
I think if any other garage see that car and see the nuts and bolts missing that Josh has put back in it, they would have said we're not touching
Well,
it
quite
anyway.
possible, being
Yeah.
that it's electric. So
Yeah, definitely.
That's, you know.
Have you got them numbers there,
Right,
mate?
yeah.
So I won't sit there and waffle on too much. It was very, very interesting what Josh done there.
Oh, fantastic.
I watched it.
Fantastic.
And then I watched it back again with Chris.
Very clever,
Yeah.
clever guys, aren't they?
And you was like, you can't cut any of that out.
No,
yeah,
no, you can't, can you?
No, so we paid $12.50 for it, which upset the guy at the garage. Again, I'm not going to get into that. Transport costs was £3.50. The travel lodge, 72 quid. Train fare, 58. Josh, £960. MOT, £40. Tracking, £30. Valet, £25. Wheel refurb, going to send that up there. It's £280. Resistor, 97p.
Yeah. There is something else that we haven't included, but it's purely because we've not got the invoice.
Service kit.
Josh serviced it at the same time. didn't
He said to me yesterday, Rob, the car's ready. The air filters in it are disgusting. And you said that when we first got it, because the top cover was missing,
Yeah.
and you could see them, they was rotten. So we've done oil filter, fuel filter, air filters, and oil. And I've got the invoice for that. Not the invoice, I've got the worksheet that they done on it, and it was 1.6 hours.
But we don't know the price
No,
yet,
we
do
don't know
so
the
we've
price
not
yet.
included that.
So we got a total of £3,000 and 65p.
No, 3,065, that is.
Sorry, mate. Yeah, my mistake. 3,065, which is incredible for that.
Cheap car now,
Very,
isn't it?
very
Now it's
cheap car.
fixed. Yeah.
I've looked on the internet. They seem to be all over the place when you can find one for sale, because it's not that popular, believe it or not, that car. There's really, they don't make them anymore, and there's not that many of them around. It's going to be a good profit for us.
£7,500 we're going to ask for it, which is going to give us a pre-tax profit of 4,435. But we're not actually going to do that this time, are we?
Well,
what we're actually going to do is profit share with Josh, because we had to stay in our lane.
Yeah.
Josh done all of the
That's
work
right.
on that car.
That's right.
He doesn't even know it yet, but that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to deduct out every penny it cost us, and we're going to go 50-50 with Josh on the profit.
I think that's fair.
That's really fair, isn't
because it also means if we get other vehicles like this come
we
up,
can ring him up.
we can ring him up, yeah.
But guys, that is the end of the video on the Infiniti. So glad it is now done, because that was one of them ones I said to Chris, oh, it might be like that Range Rover Sport.
A real headache.
Yeah, real headache,
Yeah,
sitting
yeah.
here with weeds growing through the wheels and thinking, oh my God, what have I done? But it all turned out all right. Someone's going to end up with a lovely, lovely car.
A lot of car for that money,
Yeah.
Rob.
I drove it home. I just drove it to MOT, and honestly, I got to 60 on a dual carriageway, and then it just turns off, and it just says EV, and it's just, you can't even hear it.
I know.
Absolutely incredible, fully loaded car. So anyway, guys, drop your comments and your thoughts in the comment section down below. Of course, all of the comments aimed at Josh. Absolutely, put some nice words in there for him.
We'll put his details in the description.
We will put his details in the description down below, so you can obviously book your car in there if you need to. It's just, I'm so glad we met him.
Oh.
He's incredible, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
the knowledge.
It's unbelievable,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
And he didn't go on about it in the video, but like that iPad thing he had, that's all linked up to a database, and he has to pay a subscription monthly. I think it's like 100 odd quid. He's got all of the latest kit there, and I just went straight in, didn't I, and found it, which is unbelievable.
Should probably mention they are very busy.
They are very busy,
So
yeah.
if anyone's interested in getting to do some work, there will be a bit of a wait.
Yeah.
Because he has constantly got, I mean, what was there, 6 or 7 vehicles waiting, wasn't there,
Yeah.
when that went over there?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he's very, very busy. Guys, we are going to cut it there because, like I said, it's a long video. But if you want to follow us on Instagram, reach out to us on Instagram. Always include your telephone number, and that's Salvage Rebuilds. You can follow Chris cutting down trees, going to museums, boot fairs, Lake District, Peak District, Cornwall, everywhere. He documents it on his own Instagram, and that's Salvage Rebuilds Chris. We'll see you all very, very soon in the next one.